Hey, folks, if you're joining us virtually, we're picking back up with our lecture on economic issues ranging from 1877 to 1898 in the Gilded Age. Keep in mind that the PowerPoint is saved as a PDF and attached to our Google Classroom, so you can just go in there and you can keep along with us. However, I strongly recommend taking notes. So let's go ahead and get started. So last time when we were together, cheerful as chipmunks, we were talking about the Gilded Age. And so some of the things that were going on is industry was growing, but a lot of the things that we think of today as far as protection for workers' rights and stuff like that aren't around yet. And we talked a little bit about that. And we ended off talking about where we would have protests or even strikes turn into riots. And for example, like the Pullman strike, the Pullman was, whenever we talk about the Great Depression or an economic depression, people think, well, the Great Depression was the only time anything like that ever happened. It's not true, Henry, because actually there had been economic depressions before that, where like things are going really bad, companies are shutting down, people are losing their jobs. Well, the Pullman Company used to make these cars for the railroads. And so in the late 1800s, they had an economic depression. And so they were selling a lot less of these cars. And so they had to fire a lot of their workers because they were running out of money to pay them. So a lot of these guys got together and held a strike because they were angry about it and they wanted to have their jobs. Well, it got pretty violent. It was led by a socialist guy called Eugene Debs. We'll hear about him more later, probably, because he's going to run for president and stuff like that. Eugene Debs. Well, he was like the prime candidate for the Socialist Party of America for a while. And he wound up in jail a lot. He made a lot of noise. But luckily, only like 0.1% of America ever voted for him. So it was okay. But what he would do is he would lead these strikes that often turned violent, right? He was kind of like leading riots and stuff like that. So it's kind of funny too because he was a sworn pacifist, but it seems like violence was around him. But so some people died, and so the president, I think President Garfield, in a way to try to appease people, signed into law Labor Day. That's how we got Labor Day. All right, guys, you got Monday off because some people died in a riot. So, huh? Yeah, it's Monday.
Yay! Vacation.
Wait, is it this Monday or is it the next Monday? No, not this weekend. Not this weekend. It's the next weekend. This is a 2-day weekend and a 3-day weekend. Yeah. So, all right. I think this is a poster for a group called Grangers, right? And the Grange movement had to do with farmers trying to improve the life of farmers, because at this time they didn't have a lot of legal protections either. They wanted to change certain things, such as get more access to trains. They wanted to make changes to the currency. They felt that bankers were robbing them. A lot had to do with loans and stuff like that. And also, they felt like they were being overcharged for things, whereas big corporations weren't. So you see here, it's showing all these people have all these jobs, but it all relies on the farmer who gives them food. Yeah, that's what farmers do. So economic issues ranging from just continue. As American settlers expanded west, that's a constant theme throughout American history, that westward expansion. Remember that old term, manifest destiny. So did issues concerning farmers. So as the population goes up, there's more and more farmers. Because guess what? In the 19th century, most people were farmers. Technology and farming equipment increased rapidly. But the thing is, as a farmer, you have to be competitive. And so to stay competitive, you might need some of this new farming equipment. Um, well, as you get more equipment, it costs more money though, so you have to make the investment. So you take a loan. You might take a bad loan with high interest. Then you have a bad season when you don't get a lot of crops. And now you can't pay off that loan, so you might have your whole farm repossessed. It really stinks. So that's how you lose the farm. And it's got a lot of farmers upset. In the South, we still have a problem with sharecropping, and we'll talk more about that in a minute, which is different. The efficiency of farming led to overproduction. Well, that's basics in economics. If you have too much of something, the price goes down. I mean, it works.
Money in Great Depression. Oh, you already talked about that, right?
Well, no, kind of. We'll think about a commodity like oil. If we have a lot of oil,
Like what happened recently.
yeah, then they're like, hey, we got all we need now. We don't need you to work at the
The
oil
gas
rigs.
got low.
Yeah, gas is low, which, I mean, it's good for me because I don't really know.
But then the gas got back up. And
Yeah.
everything's up.
Well, the same thing would happen with corn and wheat and pigs and stuff like that for the farmers. They got so good at raising this stuff, there was an overabundance. So nobody was making money off of it. So this led to the reduction in selling prices of farmers' goods. Wow. So what you got all this equipment that's super expensive and fertilizers and stuff like that. And now the stuff you invest in doesn't even make the money back. It's like, I guess you could say it's like taking a bunch of student loans to get like a history degree. And then you're like, okay, I'm in a lot of debt. And then you go off and you're like a poor teacher, right? Don't worry, I didn't do that. That's one of the good things about being a veteran is they'll pay it for you. And if you do it right, you make money off college. But so yeah, like so when you go to school and when you go to college, don't go and head over it. Try not to, unless it's a really good paying job. So yeah, these guys that were making investments, they couldn't get returns. Farmers generally supported silver coinage, which would increase the money supply and inflate prices. So they wanted, so money is often based on specie, especially back on the day. And specie is precious metal, gold and silver. And so bankers tended to favor gold. Gold is more accepted as a currency internationally and stuff like that. It has more value in a small quantity. Farmers wanted the money to be based on silver because their idea, right or wrong, was that if it's based on silver, there'll be more money. And if there's more money in circulation, then they'll have a little more buying power. That was their idea. They figured that the bankers were hoarding all the gold, which would increase the money supply and inflate prices. So if somebody says there's inflation, that means things cost more. The price is inflated like a balloon. But yeah, I mean, we're not going to talk too much about it. That was a big issue for a long time, was coinage, like whether it's gold or silver. Like, some people say that's what the Wizard of Oz was written about. It's about the argument between gold and silver. So if you follow the Yellow Brick Road, it was gold. You go to the city of Oz, that was just kind of like led by a bunch of liars. But the only way to get back home was through, in the book, it's actually silver slippers. It wasn't ruby. So. There's more to it. I knew that was coming. Oh, man.
How was your weekend?
It's Tuesday.
I know, I wasn't here yesterday.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Well, it's good. It's good.
That's good.
I did all the things I wanted to do, and I actually caught up on sleep.
Must be nice. Yeah, you get sleep.
I didn't sleep all last week, so I need.
I got 3 hours of sleep. The hotel woke me up.
Well, how'd your test go?
I,
How you feel?
I passed the Navy and the Coast Guard, but I passed the Army.
Maybe. Try to be a SEAL. Yeah, working that swimming and stuff.
Is that the Marines or no?
Navy SEALs or
The
the
Navy
Navy?
SEALs?
Yeah.
I
Well, there's a lot of jobs in Navy and Coast Guard, right? I mean, like, you always retry. You could go in one of those, and you could change your branch of service.
yeah, I felt like that's a lot of paperwork to do. Is switching from the Army and going to the Navy.
Doesn't matter. They recognize each other's rank. The only one that doesn't recognize rank is, I think,
I think
The
the highest I'm gonna
Marines?
get is a E3 or E2. That's probably the highest I'm gonna get.
mm
No,
no. If you just go in 3 years, you should come out at least E4.
E4.
As long as you don't mess up.
Alright.
Don't sweat it. Other branches, I mean, it does. Yeah, it's funny. I actually took the ASVAB twice.
Yeah, I have to go back in 30 days.
You ready to move on?
Yes.
Yes.
With
Yes,
what?
we can do that. Yeah, I barely made it my first time. But there's reasons for that. I'm not going to discuss.
Yeah.
All right. So, hey, if you ever had Texas history or if you like us in cowboy stuff, this is the period 2 of the cattle trails. So like I told you last time we met, you had all these factories opening up. Cities are growing. People are moving in. People are coming to the country. Well, people like to eat beef. And Texas was chock full of this stuff. Because if you remember from your Texas history, the Spanish just released into the wild a whole bunch of cattle. And they just did open range breeding. And so Texas was full of cattle. And well, they stuck around through the Mexican era and then the Texas era and all the way till it's part of America. Yeah.
This is a legitimate question. Are we gonna learn anything about Tyler? Because I remember Tyler was established during Dallas. You know, it was around somewhere around Dallas. Are we gonna be learning about Tyler?
Okay. Well, well, Tyler was founded before the Civil War, and it really grew during the Civil War because this was actually a stopping point for people who were trying to escape the Union Army. So you had people who were like slave owners, like in Mississippi and Louisiana, and whenever they found out the Union Army was like taking ground and winning, they'd actually get their slaves and they would come to the Tyler area to try to be away from the Union so that they wouldn't be free. And then,
Oh, so
yeah.
So Tyler was kind of like it was a safe place for them.
kinda,
So that's why Tyler.
it also had a POW camp though.
Oh yeah, I can't afford.
Yeah, Camp Ford. So
I
like,
don't like that. I don't like that. So that's why I'm.
yeah, I drove by it. Didn't look like anything was there. Yeah, so Camp Ford used to be a POW camp, so enemy prisoner of war camp for Union guys.
I don't believe it.
I read a few things about like there were problems. The area is so depopulated during the Civil War that most of the men were gone, but some of the ones who stuck around were basically bandits, going around like robbing old ladies and stuff.
I heard about that.
Yeah, so.
It was in Tyler, like there's a lot of those type of people here.
Yeah, Tyler. But yeah, after the war, it built up. I don't know too much about that part, but I do know that, like, all the way till not that long ago, Tyler used to have an opera house. They had a big oak tree, I think, downtown, kind of close to the courthouse where they used to hang people.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Tree's not there anymore, right?
I don't think so. There's no oak trees down there now. So.
Sad.
Yeah, there had been a history of lynchings and stuff like here. I think the two last people who were lynched were actually white guys. They were accused of rape. But yeah, I don't really know that much about Tyler.
I mean, apparently you kind of did, but that's a lot of information you just gave me.
Oh, okay, good. So, all right, moving on to the cattle trails. So, cattle trails, of course, you had these ranchers, and there was no barbed wire or fencing yet. But north of Oklahoma, you have choo-choo trains. And so the idea was that you could get these cattle and you could drive them up these trails, though they were dangerous. The cows were they had very little value here because overproduction. There's way too many of them. So the prices were deflated.
Were they like 50 cents?
So, I don't know, something. But whenever you brought them up north where they wanted to eat cows, but they didn't have any, it was worth a lot of money. So they would drive them up, the cowboys would, up to the choo-choo trains, and then they bring them up to Chicago. Chicago had meat packing plants where they would process them, make them, can them up, and send them to other places. So, yeah, because cans were a new big thing. But yeah, like as far as like cowboy culture goes, it was like a temporary job. Not a lot of people did it that long. Most of them were either black or Hispanic. It was very low paying. So that, and I mean, it was like West Texas, so like most gringos live like towards the east at this time anyway. So that's cowboys. So, all right. So the cattle industries grew as the Plains Indians withdrew. Hey, that's another thing. For the longest time in Texas, people who were Americans and farmers didn't really move far past Dallas because that was Comanche territory. And you moved out there, you had almost no protection. And one day, your scalp's probably going to end up busy. So it's not going to be until after the Civil War that the Comanche are kind of going to get driven out of that area. And so allowing for the growth of wild cattle herds and population growth in industrialized sectors led to bigger demand of beef. Hey, I said that. It's like I read this before. Oh, wait, I didn't. All right, so railroads provided an efficient way to transport cattle to these urban areas up north, greatly aiding meatpacking industries. So there you go. Make that beef jerky. Refrigerated boxcars, which will come a bit later, will make transportation of beef much more profitable because then you can have the butchers process them here, and then just throw them in the frosty boxcar and ship them off where they need to go. Cattle trails in Texas led to good but dangerous profits, especially for like the owners. The invention of barbed wire will shut down the open range, and windmills will aid in ranching, however, as well. So, like, okay, barbed wire. So, this was in high demand because not everybody was a cowboy. Most people, remember, were farmers. And if there's one thing that could ruin your entire year's worth of crops, is having thousands of cows just kind of run through, eat, step on all your plants where you plowed, or go to your one pond where you have your water and stuff. And there's cows. If you're watching, they'll just go get in the pond. They'll drink, poop in it. They can't have the water. And so people were mad. Sometimes they'd shoot at the cowboys and stuff. But eventually, barbed wire would keep the cows off your land. However, once a lot of Texas is barbed wire up, and then the state makes it illegal to cut that wire, sorry, no more cowboys. Luckily, though, at this time, they start building railroads in Texas, so they don't have to transport them hundreds of miles like that. They can just bring them up. Places like Fort Worth, which was a big cattle town, right? And Dallas is going to emerge too as a big bank town. So it's gonna start growing because they're gonna open banks there. It's gonna do a lot of business dealing and stuff like that. Fort Worth, a lot of people bring their cows there to get processed, sold, bought, and put on trains. Windmills help out a lot because you can have dry areas where a windmill can help pull up well water. And when it pulls up that well water consistently, you can start using it to irrigate and water crops. So now a dry place all of a sudden can be used to grow food. So, they're like terraforming, I guess,
But then, where do they get their ice from? Because you're talking about the refrigerator or something like that.
That's the thing. I don't know a lot about early refrigeration because I know that it was an invention, but I don't know how it worked, right? I don't know how early refrigerated railroad cars worked.
I don't know if they went to the mountains. I don't know.
No, they didn't do that. They actually had a system that was refrigerated.
Really?
Yeah, they weren't like sending people up into the Rocky Mountains. Like, you gotta get down really fast before it melts, okay? Go. Yeah, so they weren't doing that.
Pretty cool.
Well, there have been methods to use, I think, like chemistry to make ice for a long time. Because even like the Ottoman sultans were reputed to have like ice, like whenever they'd even travel through the desert and stuff. And they didn't have any technology. I don't know how they did it, but it's like crazy. It's one of those things. But a lot of people here in Texas had ice delivered before they had refrigerators, So that's how they called them ice chests instead of refrigerators, because you just put a big block of ice in there. They had to have it delivered, like with their milk and stuff. Or they take like a big block of ice and they put it in front of a fan, and that's how you kept the house cold. You just had the fan blowing over the ice, circulating the cold air. I think we'll do one more, then we'll be done for the day. You ready for the last one? All right, let's go do it. Wait, wrong one. This computer. All right, what we got here? Captains of industry. All right, so remember we talked about robber barons? So robber baron is kind of like a mean thing to say, like a derogatory term against somebody who is like super rich and they're really corrupt and they hurt anybody to get richer. Well, captains of industry is a nice thing to call somebody. So who's an innovator that could do things that, like also kind of inspire, right? Like Andrew Carnegie. So he was a big time steel guy and he got really good at the process of making steel affordable and efficiently. So he could do things like help build modern America. Henry Ford, automobile guy. So he's going to make it where cars can be built very quickly, efficiently, cheaply, so more people can afford it. And he's going to come up with finance methods for it. Of course, Thomas Edison, really, really big time inventor, and so on and so forth. So like they all good and bad. I mean, they all have like some faults, but they also have some good things too where they help out. And a lot of them too also have like lasting legacy funds. They help do things like keep up schools and libraries, good stuff like that. So industrialists sought to corner markets through various means. Yeah. Many worked towards horizontal monopolies in which they either bought out or drove under the competition. So horizontal, you're looking at a horizon. It's flat. It's horizontal. What that means is that you have a monopoly, like, I don't know, like let's say you're Coca-Cola. So you want to be the only one who makes soda. So that means you got to find a way to shut down Pepsi and
that Walmart brand and that Brookshire brand, I don't know, I don't know, like Shasta and what RC Cola they're right on. So you just shut down all of them, where all that's left is Coca-Cola. So you got rid of all the ones that are kind of like yours, and now you're just the only one. So you got the monopoly, so you can charge as much as you want. Yay, money. So, huh? Yes, kind of. All right. Now there's another kind of monopoly too, and some businesses would do this. It's called a vertical monopoly. What this means is like this. All right, I'm Coca-Cola. I brew up my soda in my cauldron or whatever, and then I have to have it canned. So I got to pay this other guy to can my soda. Then I got to pay this other guy to deliver the soda. But instead, if you want a vertical monopoly, what do? Huh? You can your own soda. If you make a factory that you own that cans soda. And then you buy your own railroads to deliver your soda. So you have it vertical. You have all the processes under your house. It's kind of like, it'd be like Amazon. Like there's like Amazon brand stuff, right? So they have their own vitamins. I guess they have their own factory to bunch of vitamins. And then Amazon sells it, delivers it, So it became like that. So there's different kinds of monopolies. So where they would own all of the stages needed for business. Rails, mines, packaging. So like you could look at like steel, right? You own the mines to get the iron and coke and all that stuff. You have the facility to use the Bessemer process to make the steel. You got the railroads to deliver it. And you got all this other stuff, like if you just owned all this stuff to do it. Rockefeller was famous for doing this with oil, Standard Oil. Talk about that later. Big businesses were very successful in reducing competition. Yeah. So if you get rid of competitors, you get the profit more because nobody else is like doing it. Everybody has to buy from you or they can't have it. And by concentrating capital in their own hands. So by concentrating capital in their own hands, they're just get a lot of cash. Captains of industry are otherwise called profit barons, such as Carnegie, Rockefeller, Morgan, Vanderbilt, were extremely successful in amassing wealth, while at times contributing to philanthropic causes. So that means they were charitable at times, right? Like Carnegie, for example, he's going to help he's going to help finance the Tuskegee Institute, the first black college founded by Booker T. Washington. Okay, so, an example like that. So, you could think of it as kind of like patronage. Like the Italians would do this. You'd have like super rich Italians during the Renaissance. And so like artists and people like that would go up to these patrons and be like, can I please have some money and I'll make a statue? And sometimes they'd say, okay. And sometimes they'd say, no. So, yeah, this is our last one for the day, folks. When we pick back up on Thursday, we'll talk more about economic issues regarding the Gilded Age. Bye.